What's up everybody, it's me Tokenicer. Welcome back to my channel where I bring you guys analysis and insights along with the latest news and updates about the digital asset ecosystem. In today's episode, I've got a breakdown on Constellation for you guys. We're going to be going over what Constellation is, what they do, and the overall utility and tokenomics of the DAG token. So Constellation is a crypto asset project that's working mainly within cybersecurity and big data. But what exactly is Constellation, and what separates them from the rest of these other crypto projects? Well, Constellation understands the current problems we have with the scalability of our data, due to the growing amounts of data we've begun to passively generate over the years. As our current technology and systems just aren't able to handle the load to scale to the amount of data we'll be generating in the next few years if it's already having issues with scaling to our needs now. So unlike most crypto projects, Constellation doesn't use a blockchain. Rather, they use a directed acyclic graph, a DAG, which we'll be using a lot in this video. As we can see with a blockchain, the only connection each new block has is to the previous one, and essentially that forms the chain of blocks. And if we look here with a DAG, we can see that there's multiple points in the network that connect and intersect with one another. Blockchains scale vertically, so as the new block only gets information from the previous one, let's take a look at an example of a building here, built vertical, similar to how a blockchain would scale. If something big were to hit anywhere on this building, well, the whole building collapses. Boom. Whereas if we take a look at how a DAG is formed, it's like a flock of birds that keep growing horizontally in size. And if we were to take the same scenario, well, let's say the guy's lucky and hits 2 birds in 1 stone. We can still see the majority of the birds are unaffected. And put into better terms, when one DAG node falls, the rest pick up its responsibilities and scale to the environment of the new network's needs. And so with this, Constellation has built the first official layer 0 with their platform. This means their network can be built underneath other blockchains for cross-chain interoperability without the need of a third party. So another example, if we take Constellation, a layer 0, it's essentially like the land on a city block, and the buildings built on top of this city block would be like the other layer 1s, such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Avalanche. So in this instance, the layer 1s being the buildings don't really work without a layer 0, the land. Similarly to how the true potential of blockchain and DLT aren't fully brought out until the layer 0 is fully integrated. I know Michael Saylor refers to Bitcoin as digital real estate a lot, but if we're talking technologically here, Constellation being the layer 0 is the land here. But shoutouts to Michael Saylor, amazing leader with what he's doing and the example he's been setting with Bitcoin. So we see a lot of these other layer 1 crypto projects flexing their low fees and high transaction speeds with highlights such as 100 transactions per second, 1,000 transactions per second, 10,000 transactions per second, and I think I've even seen some as high as 100,000 transactions per second. Constellation takes this to another level though. Their network is completely feeless and infinitely scalable since it's horizontally scaling. So as the network grows in adoption, and their DAG becomes more adopted, the network only grows stronger and gets more scalable, faster, and more decentralized as more people join in as nodes to secure the network. And now this is where Constellation really shines. They've worked to build out the new layer of the internet. So currently we're all used to HGTP, right? It's pretty much in everything you look up on the internet and stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And it does its job, but it's nothing amazing. We had to add HTTPS for extra security. Well, Constellation has augmented all that and made their own protocol called HGTP, Hypergraph Transfer Protocol. Constellation realizes that the amount of data we generate today, which is pretty much everything on the internet, and along with how securely we need to utilize our data, that this current system just isn't going to scale much longer. Their new and improved Hypergraph Transfer Protocol is built for big data and faster, more secure, and more decentralized than the current HTTP system we're on. So more on big data. As our technology gets more advanced, so will the amount of data we passively generate and utilize. From things like self-driving cars to satellites in space to drones and government control, These are all going to be things that require lightning fast data processing along with just crazy amounts of data output. And to really emphasize big data, in 2021 we created about 2.5 million terabytes of data a day and estimated around 74 billion terabytes by the end of the year. Now, in 2025, we're estimated to make around 485 million terabytes each day and 181 billion terabytes on the year. And just for reference, 10 terabytes fit about 270 games. So yeah, 181 billion terabytes in a year. That's a lot of data. And so they're secure, scalable, and decentralized with their horizontally scaling network, as anyone with a certain amount of their native token DAG can now become part of securing the network as a node operator and be incentivized doing so. And let's do a quick little dive into the team. First up, we got Ben Jorgensen, and he's the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Constellation. But before Constellation, he really seemed to have loved working in the food industry. He's opened up multiple A5 Wagyu beef restaurants, and he actually still runs them to this day, I believe. And earlier on in his career, he worked mainly within the advertising industry and actually founded a couple startups. And here we've got another Benjamin Diggles, who's the Chief Strategy Officer and another co-founder of Constellation. Diggles has got an interesting background working at Universal Studios for a bit, along with WebTrends and Oracle. He was also co-founder of a gift game called Wix for mobile phones, and along with all this, he's even been a co-chairman for the Board of Advisors at the Portland State University since 2019. We've also got Wyatt Meltman-Flock. He's the Chief Technology Officer and, another co-founder of Constellation. And for a little background check for Wyatt, he's spent a little bit of time working early on at NASA's Ames Research Center as an intern, and after that he worked about 2.5 years at Radius Intelligence, which was a business-to-business data distribution firm that eventually got bought out in 2019. And he's also worked around at a couple other companies, namely Signal and Rally, which are both data and tech companies, before he eventually seemed to have found his home here at Constellation, building out their vision. And we've got Matisse Goldman. He's the Chief Operating Officer and, another co-founder of Constellation. Matisse has had an interesting background where he worked as, and I still believe is currently working, as a systemic coach and psychotherapist for over 11 years now at his own firm, Goldman Coaching. He also worked at the Fredenberg Group earlier on, and they pretty much did IT development along with consulting for Fortune 500 companies. And along with all that, he's also spent a couple years working as a consultant and auditor at PwC, along with an IT training manager for about 2 years at the European Central Bank. So yeah, overall, really solid team for what they're trying to build. They've got a lot of experience in tech, and Ben's got some experience building his own startups. And now let's check out some of their partnerships and collaborations. And we can see here that there's a couple pretty big names that you guys might have seen around already working with Constellation. First up, we'll be talking about Splunk, which is a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, and they were valued at about 20 billion or so at one point. They're kind of similar to Constellation in the sense they're also working with cybersecurity and big data to search and detect queries. And basically what this partnership is doing is, Constellation is allowing the data Splunk receives and generates to be validated and processed in more secure and faster ways. Splunk and Constellation are both also working at the federal level, where they're both helping the US build out a more robust security system for their drones and military technology. That might end up being lost data because, it's war. So Splunk is working with the Department of Defense at creating a joint all-domain control, whereas Constellation is working to build the multi-domain control system. So they're both kind of working together in building a system to control multiple domains, which would be like agencies and data creators to be controlled and secured by the government. And while we're talking about partnerships at the federal level, let's talk about Constellation's partnership with the US Air Force, which is one of the largest data generators on Earth. They've officially advanced to an SBIR Phase 2 contract earlier back in August this year. And that's huge, because phase 1 is just mainly for research and development purposes, but phase 2 continues the research and development, but now also includes funding, along with collaborating together. And in this case, Constellation and the US Air Force are collaborating to securely and quickly transact mission data across all their databases. Because, well, this is the US Air Force we're talking about. One wrong move or input and we could see a state getting blown up or something. So the Air Force does not fuck around at all when it comes to security. And well, on top of the US Air Force, the contract the two have signed also involved a couple other federal level agencies. As we can see down here, we've got the US Transportation Command, the Department of Defense, and 618 Air and Space Ops Center. All these are high level and top security federal agencies. So to see Constellation working to build with them to find a solution to the sensitive data they have to work with, that should say a lot about their legitimacy. And a little more on that. Here it says the Civil Reserve Air Fleet, which I forgot to mention, but is also part of the Phase 2 contract. But them, along with multiple Department of Defense agencies, are actually all stakeholders of Constellation's native token, DAG, since it'll be used for extra bandwidth along with operating a node. So that's pretty big news too, because I don't think there's a long list of crypto assets that government agencies are holding onto for utility purposes. And along with all this, they're also a member of Space ISAC, which pretty much stands for Space Information Sharing and Analysis Center. So pretty much it's an organization for big tech and big data companies to research and share their knowledge and information that they gain, to gather and track information and further learn about space. And if we think about it, the amount of data along with satellites in space generate insane amounts of data. Now, if we also think of how some of the satellites are all spread out around space, it kind of makes sense to be the perfect placement to set up nodes and utilize distributed ledger technology. And well, obviously the data utilized in satellites are going to have some incredibly sensitive information, where if a satellite were to get overtaken or hacked, there'd be huge problems. Now GPSs are going crazy and leading drivers into the ocean. Traffic lights are going crazy and causing cars crashing left and right. Food trusts are pretty much non-existent now, along with aircrafts pretty much being lost in the air, not knowing where to go. And worst of all, we wouldn't be able to check our crypto portfolios. And if we just take a quick look at the founding members of the Space ISAC organization, we see some huge household name consortias and academias such as Purdue University, University of Colorado, Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, along with some huge big tech companies like Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, and L3 Harris. And being a part of this organization is probably a really good sign at the acceptance and the overall legitimacy of Constellation in the world of big data and big tech. Now, this next one isn't exactly going to be a partner, but I figured it was worth mentioning. Constellation has worked with Mobi, which is a non-profit consortium working to integrate distributed ledger technology into self-driving cars. And since Constellation's working to provide the new infrastructure for data, it just makes sense they'd both collaborate with each other. Just take a moment to think about the accuracy, precision, and speed self-driving cars will need to operate properly. One moment too late or too early, and it'd be a lot more than money and lawsuits on the line. One late input could lead to a car not stopping in time and causing death. Or even worse, inaccurate data input, for example. Maybe one car gets the wrong input to stop at the red light and continues going through the intersection. Now you've probably got a big car crash and emergency vehicles rushing to the middle of the intersection. So yeah, automotive cars are gonna need only the best streams of data. So Mobi and Constellation had worked together to co-author a white paper talking about the difficulties of data exchanging and how the true potential of distributed ledger technology could solve some of these problems. And eventually the two had also worked to create the standard for DLT integration into vehicles for exchanging data between every part needed to build out this vision. And here I highlighted in the white paper that the goal of a working DLT architecture is to enable data exchange in the mobility sector between all parties involved, which would pretty much mean the roads, the cars, the lights, and whatever else. A crypto exchange that's been rising in popularity over the past year, LCX, is also one of Constellation's partners. And LCX isn't your usual crypto exchange. They're perhaps the most regulated exchange out there, based in Liechtenstein with over 8 licenses, and they're specifically working to have regulated tokenized assets and digitized securities to be traded on their platform. So this partnership between the two will allow specific layer 0 tokens created on Constellation's hypergraph to be added and traded on LCX's exchange. On top of just that, LCX is actually going to be integrating hypergraph and building their own state channels into their exchange, which we'll get further into later, but it's pretty much a business setup on hypergraph into their centralized exchange for fast cross-chain swaps and trades across their platform. And well, as I just mentioned, LCX is a mastermind when it comes to regulatory compliance. So they're actually going to be helping out with the layer 0 tokens and other businesses to be minted on Constellation and to be listed and traded in a regulated manner. And another crypto company they've partnered with, Constellation is also partnered with Quant Network, which for those of you guys who've been following me around for a minute now, probably know that I talk a bunch about Quant, and for good reasons too. Quant's a crypto company that doesn't actually use either a blockchain or a DAG, but rather they've built the first ever blockchain operating system to connect every single legacy system and network together to be universally interoperable with this new blockchain technology. Now, I won't get too deep into Quant, this isn't a Quant video, but I've got a bunch of content related to Quant here on YouTube and on Medium and Twitter for those who want to read up more on it. I'd definitely say it's my favorite project in the space just because of what they're doing and how they've set up their mission. But enough about just Quant. Quant and Constellation are working together to build the vision of smart cities into a reality. So this pretty much means things like integrating IoT automation into every variable aspect of our daily lives. And if we check out the white paper for this collaboration proposal, we can see how this will be implemented, with Constellation building a connection to Overledger, which is Quant's operating system, to allow for a sandbox environment for developers to test on. I'm sure you guys can understand why this stuff can't just be tested out in the open. One wrong move or miscalculation and panic is gonna fly across the city. And here we see this partnership builds a stable infrastructure for big data to be processed and validated in real time, along with providing developers the proper environment and tools to build out these data streams. Remember how we talked about MOBI, the consortium for DLT in automotive cars? Well, Quant is actually a board member of MOBI, so I wouldn't be surprised if the two also work together to form some additional solutions to connecting self-driving cars with the roads and the cities and the lights, because, well, this would essentially play into their project of interconnected cities. The overall idea and potential of disruption from interconnected cities are huge, and some ideas we probably can't even fathom yet. But a couple examples could be breaking news that's perfectly synced and alerted across all cities in real time, or energy efficiency and distribution statistics from city to city, and the same could be done by a city's recycling statistics and carbon footprint. It's crazy to even think about, but Constellation and Quant are literally connecting cities and civilizations and leading us into this new industrial revolution. And we get to all just watch it all unfold.
Now let's talk about Constellation Network's native token DAG for a bit. Now, DAG is an interesting crypto asset, as most crypto assets and fiat have what you'd consider extrinsic value. Well, as far as I know, DAG is the only crypto asset to have what you'd consider intrinsic value. But what does that mean? So, let's take a little cow for example, and let's pretend like we're back in the days where people would trade tangible goods like eggs or sheep. So this cow here, it has intrinsic value. There's an underlying utility to the cow as an asset overall. It can be used for milk, food, or leather. So essentially there's a real valuation to the cow for what it can do and what it provides. And it's more than just speculation. Its value comes from the known fact that cows have use cases beyond people just assigning it a value. Now let's take the cash you have in your wallet, for example. This has extrinsic value. We all agree that this bill is valued based on the number on it because the central bank and government said so, and we pay for things with it. But in reality, it's nothing much more than a piece of paper. Regardless whether it be a dollar bill or a $100 bill, the intrinsic value is, well, what a sheet of paper that size is worth, and I'm guessing that's a few cents if that. So it's the external factors like governments and a common belief between a buyer and a seller that give these paper bills value.
But anyways, back to the DAG token. So DAG's got a circulating supply of roughly 2.5 billion at the moment, with a total supply of 3.5 billion. Though the total supply was initially closer to roughly 3.7 billion. But in 2019, the team had decided they'd prove their commitment and dedication to building out Constellation, and they decided to burn their 288 million tokens that were allocated to the core team. And so what gives DAG its intrinsic value is that it represents as an index of all the value of data and bandwidth on the hypergraph protocol. On top of that, it's required to use for certain activities on their network, specifically ones that a lot of businesses will cater towards. Things like running a node and state channels will all require DAG to build, and well, we'll get a bit further into state channels in a minute. So DAG will also be used as the main token for atomic swaps on their platform. And again, it'll be an index of the bandwidth on hypergraph, along with being required to just build on their network. There's also an incentivized way of distributing the inflating amount of DAG tokens back to those who are securing the network by either validating as a node operator or staking on a soft node for those who don't have the technical knowledge to set up a node. And of course, DAG will also be the medium of exchange on hypergraph, along with voting and governance rights, which will also be determinant on the amount of DAG each user holds, just like the utility many governance tokens already have in crypto today. So since DAG is an index of the valuation of data on the hypergraph network, based on who they're already working with, if we just assume they continue to grow in adoption, which I think is a reasonable assumption, along with the progressive growth of their ecosystem, in return the DAG token is imminent to grow over time as more businesses build state channels on their platform, along with just the onboarding of retail clients. Alright, so let's take a quick minute to talk about hypergraph for big businesses and corporations real quick, and why it's so attractive in their eyes. And it's largely thanks to the concept of state channels the team has built. State channels are what I'd like to consider as smart contracts on steroids pretty much. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with smart contracts from layer 1s like Ethereum and AVAX, and they pretty much allow you to interact with your assets through a web application. And most times they run on a if this then that logic. So think like if Tom buys 200 bananas, then send him 2 ETH. So they're kind of limited to the data sources they can use, and in return require oracles like Chainlink to validate the info for them. Now enter state channels. State channels takes this to a whole new level, as now they're able to get data from any source, so think satellites, APIs, or cars. State channels are also able to solve the oracle problem, since they're able to validate the data that they bring in through tracking its point of origin in real time, along with just also being able to stretch the programming logic to beyond just the if this then that smart contracts run on. So overall, state channels for the scale of what Constellation is doing just makes sense. There's far more real-world application and freedom for developers to build out microservices and businesses on. Alright, so to wrap it up, Constellation is the first legitimate Layer 0 crypto project, and they're already working primarily to use blockchain and DAG technology to solve some of the biggest issues we have with our exponentially growing amounts of data that we'll be generating in the future. I mean, they're already working with some huge name companies and organizations, and not just in the crypto industry too, but the Department of Defense and space organizations. That's huge. So as our data continues to evolve and grow exponentially over the years, it's going to become an even bigger essential need to our global economy in both the macro and micro landscape. From startups and corporations building on hypergraph to military drones, smart cities, and satellites, these are all going to require ridiculous amounts of data. Our technological future lies in this new asset of data, and Constellation understands this, so they've already gone and built out the framework and infrastructure, and begun working with multiple industries to help scale us into our future needs of data utilization. Alright, so that was our breakdown and introduction to Constellation Network. So let me know what you guys think and want to see next. And if you guys like what I'm doing, feel free to show some love by leaving a like and subscribe. It'd really mean a lot to me and really make my Christmas holiday. And don't forget to check out some of my other content platforms and videos here. You can always reach out to me through Instagram, Twitter, and Telegram. My DMs are pretty much always open. And check out some of my other fundamental analysis content I've got on Medium. And for those of you who don't feel like reading, well, I've made a Spotify podcast just for you guys. Alright, well, that's all I've got for you guys today. Have a great holiday and stay safe, everyone. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.